Tunisia, which is touted as a success story of the 2010 Arab Spring or the Islamic Awakening movement, is facing a political crisis after President Kais Saied suspended parliament for at least a month. He also fired the prime minister amid protests over rising COVID-19 cases and a struggling economy.
The President of the Republic will take charge of the executive power with the help of the government, which will be headed by a new leader appointed by the President of the Republic.
Hello, I'm Mubarak Kenya, and a warm welcome to another edition of Africa Today, a program which gives you an incisive analysis on events taking place across Africa. In the first part of our program, we are focusing on the recent political events in Tunisia. And in the second segment of our program, we shall be talking about how the Israeli regime has infiltrated the African Union and obtained observer status. This move has been opposed by a strong bloc of African countries and masses across the continent. Now stay with us till the end of our show as we analyze these subjects, and send us your comments as you watch.
Tunisia political crisis. Tunisia's President Kais Saied announced exceptional measures on the 25th of July, initially for 30 days, but open to extension. Let's take a listen to the president announcing some of the decisions he has taken.
The first decision is to freeze all the powers of parliament. The second decision is to lift the immunity of all members of parliament. The third decision is that the president assumes the executive authority with the help of a prime minister appointed by the president of the republic.
This announcement by the president plunged Tunisia into a political turmoil. His opponents accuse him of having staged a coup, but Saied has said his actions are justified under the constitution, which allows the head of the state to take unspecified exceptional measures in the event of an imminent threat.
The head of Tunisia's biggest party, the Islamic Awakening party, Rashid Ghannouchi, who is also parliament speaker, has accused President Saied of a coup when he declared he was seizing executive authority.
قلت فوجئنا اليوم بقرارات فوقية فاجأت مش النهضة فقط، فاجأت الشعب التونسي وفاجأت العالم في دولة تفتخر بأنها أول ديمقراطية عربية وتتوفر على أحدث دستور. في هذه الدولة يعلن عن قرارات في جوهرها انقلاب ولا تسمى إلا انقلاب.
Now, for more on the situation in Tunisia, we contacted Elijah Magnia, a journalist and political analyst. Thanks a lot for your time, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Now, first, was the move by President Saied expected, or in other words, was it a surprise?
Well, actually, it's not very surprising because of the state and the country that was developing since the summer 2020, the corruption, the mismanagement of the government in place, and also the consequences of the COVID when the Tunisian population, only 7% of the population has been vaccinated. So the president took advantage of the Tunisian constitution. He is someone who understands very well the law. And according to the 2014 constitution, Article 80, it gives him, in the event of imminent danger, threatening the nation's institution or the security or independence of the country, he has the right to call the state of emergency.
Now, Mr. Magnia there says that the Tunisian president acted according to the constitution. President Saied, a constitutional lawyer, has also reiterated that he acted according to the constitution of Tunisia and rejected accusations that his action amounts to a coup.
I have taken responsibility. I am taking a historic responsibility. Those who claim this matter is related to a coup need to revise their lessons in the constitution.
Some Tunisians celebrated the president's controversial decision, while others condemned the move, saying it's a return to dictatorship. Let's take a look at the mixed reactions by protesters.
The decisions by President Kais Saied are not correct, against the constitution and reality. They bring us back once again to 1954. To see parliament closed by tanks is disgraceful.
Now, as we have seen, crowds in Tunis and elsewhere in the country immediately celebrated the president's move, while some condemned the decision. Now, are such mixed reactions an indicator that the society is polarized?
We can't forget that Tunisia was the first country who started the Arab Spring. It's a country that's very much alive, with a population that's very much aware of what's happening in their country, and they immediately react to it. This is why people were happy, because they see in the president someone who wants to put the country back on track and to stop corruption and do something about it. And he already claimed that there are many people who stole a lot of money from the country, from the ministries, and this is why people liked it.
Tunisia's Ennahda party has called on President Saied to engage in dialogue to avoid deepening the country's political crisis. Party leader Rashid Ghannouchi, who has led Ennahda for decades, stood for election for the first time in 2019, winning a parliament seat and becoming the speaker. He now says they are going to use peaceful means to pressurize the government.
We are going to try to use all peaceful means: dialogue, negotiations, street pressure, pressure from organizations, internal and external pressure, to bring back democracy.
Ennahda has called for political talks to resolve the current crisis. Is dialogue an option for the president?
The president is not closing the door of the dialogue. On the contrary, he is saying that he is listening to his people and he's listening to the political parties. But because Ennahda is in charge and has a lot of power in the government and in the parliament, therefore its responsibility is according to its size. And because the government has been misdealing with the situation in the country, therefore Ennahda is responsible and should be accountable for what is happening in Tunisia.
The announcement by President Saied that he is assuming executive authority with the assistance of a new prime minister is seen by some as the biggest challenge yet to the democratic system Tunisia introduced following a 2011 revolution that ousted former Western-backed ruler Zain al-Abidine bin Ali.
Tunisia is seen as the only country that succeeded in carrying out a democratic transition among a group of Arab countries that witnessed popular revolutions that toppled their regimes, including Egypt and Libya. Now, is the decision by Saied in the long-term interest of the revolutionary ideals of the Tunisian people?
Absolutely. When we see people celebrating in the street what President Saied is doing, it means he has the support of the population and he has the support of the army and the security forces. Otherwise, he couldn't stand a similar move, not even 24 hours. But because the population is supporting him, because the population feels that he might have a chance to do something or to introduce some changes in the country, this is why he has the back up of the population and the security forces and many people, including members of the parliament, who are standing with him. So this is why it is a move that needs to be looked upon as a positive move, and the president is not taking the situation in hand, abolishing the position of the prime minister or the parliament, but he's only suspending it until he sees clear of how to move forward in Tunisia.
The leader of Ennahda has accused the United Arab Emirates of supporting the political turmoil in Tunisia. In an interview with the Times newspaper, Ghannouchi noted that the UAE was determined to finish off the Arab Spring that has seen long-time rulers overthrown in several Arab countries.
Now, our last question. What's your take on the international reaction towards the events in Tunisia?
Well, something has to be said that President Saied doesn't have a strong party behind him to support him. He is a man of law, and he has been elected as a president with the support of the crowd in the street and the population. We see the international community dealing with him very cautiously, not condemning what's happening in Tunisia because they want to see further. Nobody can stand against the fight of corruption. And this is why nobody can stand against President Saied as long as he is moving in that direction. Tunisia has a very aware population that will react to any dictatorship or to corruption, and the population is giving President Saied a chance to express himself and to do something about the mismanagement of the country and to fight corruption.
Our guest there says that President Saied has the goodwill of most Tunisians in his recent drastic measures. Now, will he meet the high expectations of the population? We shall keep you posted on the events in this North African state. Now, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Israeli regime's desperate move to infiltrate the African Union. Don't go away.
Israel infiltrates the African Union.
The apartheid Israeli regime is at it again, using underhand tactics and corruption to spread its tentacles and cover up for its crimes. In its latest move, this desperate regime has infiltrated the African Union and obtained observer status using undiplomatic means. On the 22nd of July, the regime attained observer status at the AU after nearly 20 years of lobbying.
This is while pro-Palestine language is typically featured in statements delivered at the AU's annual summits. Palestine already has observer status at the African Union, and thus granting the Israeli regime observer status is seen by many African countries as contrary to the pro-Palestine ideals of this pan-African body. South Africa and Algeria are some of the major African powers that have come out openly to vehemently oppose the decision by the African Union Commission to admit the Israeli regime as an observer in this organization. In opposing the move, the South African government says it was appalled by the African Union Commission's decision to grant Israel observer status at the African bloc.
President Cyril Ramaphosa was visibly upset by the decision and says his country was not consulted. Let's take a listen.
With regards to the admission of Israel as an observer at the AU, we've expressed our deep concern about that because it's a decision that was taken by the chair of the commission and without consulting the member states. Certainly we were not consulted. We have views because we are concerned about what is happening in Palestine. The continued situation there in Palestine, in our view, militates against just warmly accepting Israel as an observer in Africa, particularly in view of the positions and the views that we have taken ourselves as a country against the state of Israel on this issue. So we are opposed to their admission. We are concerned about the decision that has been made. And as it is now, a number of countries on the continent are expressing their unhappiness and dissatisfaction.
Well, for more on the Israeli regime's move to infiltrate the African Union, we contacted Tiseto Magama, an activist and former member of the South African Parliament. He's also a senior board member and spokesperson of Africa for Palestine. Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
Now, our first question, what's your take on this shocking decision to grant the Israeli regime observer status at the African Union?
It emerged that the African Union Commission chair, Mr. Faki, took this decision on his own without consultation with the member states and without consultation with the Executive Council of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the African Union. And so as a result, most Africans were shocked. Political parties on the continent were shocked. governments of the African continent were shocked. And indeed, as you would have seen from the response of our own government, our government clearly expressed its displeasure, in fact, its abhorrence and condemnation of that decision that was taken without consultation with the heads of state or the ministers of foreign affairs of the African continent.
Algeria has taken vigorous steps with several African countries to revoke Israel's observer status at the African Union. According to sources, so far, Algeria has teamed up with South Africa, Tunisia, Eritrea, Senegal, Tanzania, Niger, Comoros, Gabon, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Liberia, Mali, and the Seychelles to protest against the decision. Algerian Foreign Minister Ramtane Lamamra says his country will not remain silent regarding a decision that was taken by the AU without prior consultations with the member states.
Mr. Magama, as you stated earlier, many countries were not consulted on the decision. Now, has the Israeli regime used the divide and rule tactic to infiltrate the African Union?
Of course. It's typical of settler colonialists. This is what they do. Hundreds of years ago, they did exactly the same on the African continent. The earlier European settlers using the divide and rule tactic, to turn the oppressed against each other. And of course, to break up solidarity amongst the people of the global south. And so this is one such tactic of the Israeli regime. Now, I think it's important also to see this in the broader context of what we have seen in the so-called, Abraham Accords that led to the co-optation of, countries in the Middle East and in North Africa, notably Morocco, and others on the African continent in trying to get support behind the apartheid Zionist project, in Palestine.
The Israeli regime previously held observer status at the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, but was long thwarted in its attempts to get it back after the OAU was disbanded in 2002 and replaced by the African Union or the AU. Now, how has the Israeli regime been able to infiltrate the African Union decision-making organs to obtain the observer status after many futile attempts?
What they then were able to do this time around was to bypass the structures of the African Union and then, of course, get to co-opt, it seems. And some are even claiming, bribing the chairperson of the African Union Commission. We don't know whether that's true, but those are some of the allegations that are being made by social movements on the African continent to explain why this sudden change of mind by the AU chair, especially because he knows this is a highly controversial issue. It is a matter that has been resolved on by both the Executive Council of Ministers of the African Union throughout these 20 years and the heads of state and government, throughout these 20 years. And they have consistently resolved to reject Israel's observer status in the African Union.
Israel's desperate move to endear itself to Africa comes after the African Union chairperson condemned the usurper regime's bombardment of the Gaza Strip in May this year, as well as violent attacks on the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Speaking to French TV, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa also said Gaza reminds him of the apartheid era in his own country.
Well, the situation in Gaza is most worrying. We as South Africans are most concerned because the images that we've been seeing of people being prevented to move around, of their homes being destroyed, of people being driven out of their homes before they are bombed, of the Israeli soldiers manhandling people, brings back very terrible memories of our own history and apartheid, when people were moved, forcibly moved from their homes, which they'd occupied for generations, when their homes were destroyed. So this, for us, is very close to our own suffering under apartheid. And when we see those images, we can't but side with the Palestinians.
Now, will Israeli presence at the African Union have an impact on the continental body's support for the liberation of Palestine?
But we are concerned even beyond whether it will only impact the support for the Palestinian struggle. But we are concerned that already it is dividing the very unity, it is undermining the very unity of the African Union. Israel's colonial project has only succeeded in the face of division amongst its opponents.
Over the past decades, the people of Africa have turned out massively in peaceful rallies to condemn Israeli regime crimes in Palestine. As recently as May this year, rallies were held to condemn Israeli atrocities in Gaza.
Nelson Mandela's grandson, Mandla Mandela, joined one such rally in Cape Town.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Well, mostly I stand here as a father. My son today is turning 4 years old, Mandela Ikram Mandela. And to continuously witness children in Palestine being shot in the back, being put in prison, it really pains our hearts as fathers, as parents, and also as citizens in the Republic of South Africa that have witnessed such brutalities in our past. And we are here today as a family with my wife, my father-in-law, as well as my mother-in-law, to say that we will not rest until we see a free Palestine in our lifetime. And we will speak against the brutality that is meted out against innocent children and women in Palestine. And that is why we are here united as a family today to charge forward with what Madiba once said, that our freedom is incomplete until the Palestinians are free.
Now, what's the reaction of the African masses towards this brazen move by the Israeli regime to infiltrate the African Union through bribery?
And other formations across the continent are indeed mobilizing. There are petitions, that are being drafted. There's a lot of online activity that is taking place, especially in the context, the limiting constraint, of course, being COVID-19. And so there is a sense of, there is palpable anger. The anger is palpable amongst our people, in society. And so our people will not let this fly.
Well, the masses and governments in Africa are clearly resolute in their rejection of Israeli regime's move to obtain observer status at the African Union through corruption and other unconventional means. Our time is up for today, but as always, it's been great having you. Let us know what you think about our show by dropping us a line through our social media handle. You can also watch this show through our website, presstv.ir. Thanks a lot for watching, and goodbye for now.